Hello, hi. Hi. Let me know when I'm invited. I'm going to shift a chair and make a noise. Okay. Hi, Jessica. Jessica, I feel like Jessica's the first person to invite me to the party, so I thank you. Thank you, Shelby. Hey. I'm going to try not to drink too much water because I don't think I can afford to take a pee break with how this is fastened in the back, so don't hashtag watergate me too much. Hey, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to my party. Thanks for coming to my party. We skipped last week, so I'm so grateful to have you here today, this week. I think I'm getting lipstick on my teeth a little. It's fine. No sound? Oh no. Is it just. Hold on. Oh, it was you. Okay. I was like, well, nobody else is complaining about the sound, but like. It wouldn't be a Hello Leash podcast if it weren't for like every three or so lives to just be messed up in some way where you guys get to see me like panic. I was gonna say on stage, probably because I'm thinking about the Oscars, or like panic on camera and be like, "Let me figure this out. Trolls, don't leave me. Keep following me to every live." So, just to say right out the gate, because I need to get in the habit of being very succinct about what we're talking about today. Obviously, everybody in the world and their mom and their dogs are talking about what's being called the slap herd around the world, which, if you aren't aware, Will Smith slapped the crap out of Chris Rock's face on stage at the Oscars 2 nights ago. Thursday night was, or what day of the week is it? Sunday night, that would have been. Today's not Saturday, Alicia. But one thing I have not noticed, I've seen videos talking about like this happened. What do you think? Who's in the wrong? And then it's just that. It's just like, what do you think? Oh, it was a hard slap. Or like I feel bad for him, but I feel bad for him too. And it's like that's it. And so I want to dig a little deeper and talk about what I got to be careful what I say in the first couple minutes, the words that I use, but what the crap is going on? What's going on with Will Smith? An interesting thing too is that I listen to podcasts usually while I work. Not usually, a good bit of the time. But I really I consume a lot of content from the comedy community. So obviously watching a lot of like Tiger Belly, which is the podcast that I was watching today. And it happened to be from about a year ago. Anthony Jeselnik was on Tiger Belly, and they were talking about hashtag just comedian things. They were talking about people going on stage at the Comedy Store and set times and people bumping other people out of line, I guess you'd call it. And how like some people are just kind of jerks about it, and they run over, they do an hour set, when they're supposed to do 15 minutes just to be a jerk to everybody after them. Fun fact, they called by name Charles. That's the English version of Carlos Mencia. No surprise there, I don't think. Dane Cook, not really any surprise there either, but they mentioned those guys. But then they also said, Jeselnik specifically said, I don't mind if there are certain types of comedians that can come on and bump me off and stay for however long. And he specifically mentioned Chris Rock. He said, if Chris Rock wanted, he comes on and he wants to practice his Oscars speech or his Oscars, routine. He's like, by all means, Chris Rock, please do that. We want to be here and help you with that and hear that. And I was just like, ooh, that was a year ago. That was a year ago, dude. And he had no idea what was coming. Granted, who knows what's in the cards for Chris Rock. I've heard a few people say that like he's set for life in terms of like content. Like he's going to have, jokes built off of this whole situation for a while. Um, I'm sure that he feels better now than he did in the moment, the in the moment that the slap happened. Um, I'll give you a little brief rundown if you just happen to like be sleeping the past week and just woke up for to be here for this live. It's rewind time. Oh, Will Smith. Yeah, I can't do it. I can't do it. But I can do the fork night. Ugh. He has publicly spoken in the form of like a tweet, I believe. Yeah, in case you didn't hear, at the Oscars, it was late, wasn't it? My time, it was like 10 o'clock at night, on Sunday. But Chris Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. He made a G.I. Jane joke. If you didn't know, Jada Pinkett Smith is bald. What you may or may not know is that she has alopecia, which is an autoimmune disorder, which can lead to hair loss, which is one of the deciding factors that went into Jada deciding to cut off all her hair, which is like, oh, excuse me, sorry, but like hair is a big deal for a lot of people, and I'm not going to grandstand and like try to teach my community about Black issues, but hair is a really big deal in terms of identity and expression, and it is a really big deal in the Black community. So I don't know what all Jada Pinkett Smith has said about that experience of, deciding to cut off her hair. She's rocked a lot of different styles, a lot of short styles. It looks good on her. I've heard her talk about wearing turbans and how that's just a really cool, like, cultural I gotta slow it down for a sec. Accessory. An accessory that she's having fun with. Um, but I can't say I'm sure about anything, but I can be pretty sure that it's been a pretty touchy subject or a sensitive thing, because it's an autoimmune disorders. Like they're not fun. So yeah. So I don't know if Chris Rock knew that Jada has alopecia, and or if that's a reason slash the reason that she cut off her hair. But regardless, he made the joke. Can't wait to see G.I. Jane 2. It wasn't even really a good joke. Um, and then we initially saw Will Smith laugh at the joke. And then, like, right next to him was Jada, of course, and she just like rolled her eyes big. And shortly thereafter, Will went right up on stage, smacked him straight across the face, went off stage, and then shouted from his seat, basically, keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth. And he said it a couple of times. And wow, wow, I'm curious as to how people felt initially when they saw that. Um, I have to be honest, I felt bad for both of the guys. I hadn't like It took me a little while to fully like process like what all happened, and I'm still processing that. But initially, like, you see a man just so like how am I trying to describe this? Like the opposite of dignified, like just humiliated on stage. And then, he is the host, so it's his job to stand up there and like recover from this situation. He was physically assaulted, and and kind of keep the show going. And this is a huge important show that millions of people are watching live. I don't know if surely they were giving him some direction and like an earpiece if he had one, but gosh, I just felt for him in those moments. I was like, I don't know if it's me projecting onto him, but like I felt like he was about to burst into tears, because like it's the embarrassment, for sure the pain. Like that was a big slap. Pain, but also like embarrassment, the pressure to carry on and all of that. So here we go. I've already talked for 10 minutes. I could have monetized the whole shebang. That, like I said, I've seen other videos just like, hey, this happened. What did you think? This is what I thought. But yeah, I felt for Chris. I mean, it was a very violent act of violence. But then at the same time, like, you saw Will Smith crying throughout, particularly when he got the award for Best Actor for his role in King Richard, I think it's called. He played Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena. And he was crying. We saw prior to that, various, I wrote it down right here, various of his peers, kind of um, kind of consoling him. And I thought about this a little bit more because he was particularly supported and comforted by Tyler Perry, Denzel Washington, Bradley Cooper. I'm sure there were others, but then the conversation kind of went to like, well, I saw one. It was kind of a joke, but they were like, this man goes on stage and commits this act of violence on another, and he doesn't have the police called on him. If you didn't know, Chris Rock declined to file a police report. And why does Jake have to be so damn noisy when he gets home? Jake. Wonder if I stop talking, if he noticed. Like, if I stop talking, then he knows. Like, but where was I? See, that's why you can't do that, because your girl loses her train of thought so easily. I'm gonna turn off this heater really quick. I was afraid my arms would get too cold. The conversation, people feel, obviously there's like a variety of feelings. You have certain, in fact, I wrote down how various, people who were, or responses from Will Smith's contemporaries, if you will, example, Tiffany Haddish. I saw that I think it was the Entertainment Tonight interviewer asked how she felt about it. She gave praise to Will Smith, saying that it was beautiful what he did. She referred to him as a man standing up for his wife, and she said, that's a good thing to see, especially with people in this industry that we think that everything's about us. She says everything's not about you; it's about your family. Sometimes they spoke to John Leguizamo. And he called it an unfortunate incident. He said he would have liked an apology for Chris during Will's acceptance speech, and he said, unfortunately, he tarnished his "quote unquote" amazing performance with his behavior, and we shouldn't take ourselves that seriously. And then we also heard from Diddy, was kind of like, pretty diplomatic of him on stage. He expressed a desire to be kind of a peacemaker, and said that he wanted to help them resolve that at the after party. And then he would later tell Page Six that they eventually made amends. Will and Chris did afterwards. So I mean, there's a variety of reactions to this situation, and I will state very clearly, just as I do in most situations, there's a lot of nuance here. I don't fully side with one or the other. I think that the joke that Chris made, I sound like him, right? Like, he was so discombobulated afterwards that he couldn't get his sentences out right. He sounded like me in front of 50 people, him in front of millions. Not to mention the crowd that was in front of him, my goodness. But his joke was like, even in the scope of being accepting of tasteless jokes, right? It still wasn't funny. I was disappointed. But hopefully he learns from this that there are certain jokes you just don't go for. There are certain, particularly anything to do with a person's looks. Ironically, a friend was just telling me, like, that same day, about how somebody she knew approached a woman at a party with the shaved head and was like, "Oh, are you gay, or are you a cancer patient?" And she was like, "Well, this is just my hair. I just like my hair like that." And he was like, "Well, then why do you choose to present like you're queer?" Which, like, give everybody a moment to be pissed off at that person that I don't know, and I won't name his name. And then to see kind of the flip side of this, somebody who has a shaved head, not necessarily by choice, like, yeah, by choice, but not really. It's just always inappropriate. It's always inappropriate. Yes, very awful, Mindy. Very. So, um, I want to be clear about that. Don't stand for the joke. Really don't stand for the violence. If Will Smith had just said what he said from his seat, keep my wife's name out of your mouth or whatever, had a talk with him outside, even said, meet me outside. How about that? Like anything like that, like I would have been much I was watching ABBA and Preach, and it was they made a really good point. Preach made a really good point. If you're not familiar with ABBA and Preach, they have a YouTube channel. They do a lot of social commentary, but they also come from the comedy scene. And if you're familiar with the Fresh and Fit guys, ugh, ugh. But the skinny douchebag from the tall, skinny one made some sort of remark about Preach's wife, said something like he's married to a beluga whale or something like that. Again, not a funny joke. And Preach they were one of the first ones, at least that I saw, to make a video about it. Like it happened, they made a video. Somehow Preach was over at Abba's apartment and they were making a video. And Preach said, no, the way you do it is you wait until they make the comment, then you challenge them to a boxing match, and then wait for them to pussy out, basically, and not show up to the boxing match, and then you win, basically. I'm sure that Preach would have knocked him the F out if Fit, is that his name? If Fit had shown up for that, or is he Fresh? I don't care. He's neither fresh nor fit, but Preach would have knocked him out for sure. But yeah, it was an act of violence, and that was a part that was just like, I cannot, no matter what, stand behind that. So, love you, Miss Tiffany Haddish. Disagree, though. I want to say, with the people who do have varying responses to a situation like this, especially, like I said, his contemporaries, especially immediately after it happened, I need as many people as will listen to me to suspend your judgment for a moment and just bear in mind that every single person approaching this situation with a varying opinion on what happened is coming from a different set of life experiences that has informed their opinion on what just happened. And we don't have to necessarily respect their judgment of it, their verdict on the situation, but we do need to respect the people and the life experiences they come from. So, some people have come from a background where they're like, yeah, well, and we'll get into this too. Will Smith was one of these people. Like, some people come from a background where they were around, perhaps, like, their father was not supportive of their mother ever, and they just wanted to see, perhaps they were violent with the mothers, or absent, or what have you, and want to see, we've seen a lot of comments like that. We want to see a man who's there to stand up for his wife or stand up for his family. And then, of course, you have other people that are just like, violence is not the answer, not ever, 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 ever. And I'm guessing my audience is probably understanding of that perspective. So, yeah, just all around bad, sad situation. It's funny if you look at it at like surface level, some of the memes, but then if you really think about it, it's just kind of sad all around. It's a very confusing situation. So, what I came to after really like thinking about it for some time is that something's going on with Will Smith, because that's not normal behavior for most people. Will Smith is always, talk about dignified, just a very dignified person, very well respected in not only the acting community, but also is in the music community, just in general, one of those like J-Lo types, kind of like triple threat types, long-standing career, squeaky clean image. A family that we'll talk about the marriage issues in recent years, but a family that in the history of their being in the public light has just been super well respected, and for good reason. Intelligent, creative people who, despite their mistakes and transgressions, or whatever you want to call them, their entanglements, They try. They try to love each other. Phoenix Light says nothing should be sacred in comedy, but it's how you construct the joke. This just wasn't a good joke. Didn't warrant a slap though. I agree. I agree with that all around. I'm on the side of comedy typically. Like we gotta like preserve comedy. Comedy itself is sacred, and that's something that is starting to kind of like flitter out the window, as I'm just going to say it, as PC culture kind of takes over. And because I am on the side of comedy so much, you guys hear me be serious so much, but I actually like have such, now that people out in the alley are being loud, I have such a deep respect for comedy, and I do think that it is an institution that needs to stay in our society in order to keep things light sometimes, in order to keep us happy and interacting and jovial and all of that. But yeah, sometimes comedy can be hurtful. Sometimes comedy can be dangerous, in fact. Um, but on the topic of like what the hell's going on with Will Smith, I also noticed too, like I said, some people are like, oh, so this man goes on stage, commits an act of violence on another, and then he wins an award, which like that wasn't going to change. So I'm sorry if you have that opinion that like he shouldn't have gotten his award, that was already decided. But gets his award, gets all this praise, gets a standing ovation, and gets all this support from the people around him. Like, yeah, at first glance, it's like that's kind of messed up. Um, but I also I wonder if other people, Tyler Perry, Bradley Cooper, Denzel Washington, especially Denzel, because we're going to talk about some of his advice. I wonder if they were seeing kind of what I see, which is, yeah, Chris Rock was the victim of that act, but you're starting to see somebody maybe who's more broken than Chris Rock was in Will Smith. Let me turn this over. My phone, whenever it lights up, you guys know I get easily distracted. But yeah, I wonder if they just saw somebody who's like broken, somebody who's cracking under whatever kind of pressure, perhaps. And that's what I saw. So it kind of makes sense to me in a way, that people would comfort him. Though I talk a lot about this kind of balance between mercy and justice. Which one are you on the side of? And I tend to be pretty balanced, a little bit more on the side of justice, which is why you hear me, expressing opinions and stuff like that. But you still have to exercise this muscle that is mercy, that is compassion, that is empathy. And perhaps, Will Smith he's going to incur some sort of consequence, hopefully, for it. But in that moment, he was a broken man. So I'm not holding it against anyone for comforting him at that moment. But yeah, while he was giving his acceptance speech, because he did win the award for Best Actor for his role in King Richard, he talked about being protective of his family, like his character was. He cried a lot. He talked about God's calling to love and protect others. He talked about kind of the abuse, his words, and disrespect sustained by quote unquote people in this job, and that you just kind of have to smile and pretend it's okay, which I don't disagree with. I don't disagree with anything he said. I would have liked an apology for Chris, but in particular, he pointed out a bit of advice from Denzel. I put hearts around Denzel's name. If you don't know, I have a game that I play with myself, but then like whoever's around me gets to play too, just because. And it's called Nobody Doesn't Like. Nobody doesn't. It's funny because there used to be people. Denzel Washington is like top of the list, always has been. Will Smith used to be one of those people, or Will Smith. Yeah, I mean, he still kind of is. I don't know. Not today. Ellen used to be on that list. But like just people that are just generally beloved. And Denzel Washington has just consistently been one of those people. And Will quoted him and said that, and I have to assume, but I can't be sure, that he gave him this advice that in that moment. He said, be careful at your highest moment. That's when the devil will come for you, which is an interesting bit of advice. It's kind, it's loving, but it's also cautionary. And Will Smith, in his winning his award, was at his highest moment. So be careful. I mean, we know that he's under a lot of pressure, or we will know after I get through my notes. He said, "I want to be a vessel for love, care, concern." He apologized to the Academy and to his peers or to his fellow nominees, but not to Chris. He said, "Art imitates life. I look like the crazy father. Love will make you do crazy things." And he said, "Thank you. I hope the Academy invites me back." Which, if you didn't know, that might not happen. We don't know. The Academy is conducting a quote unquote investigation or a review of what happened in order to decide what they're going to do and any sort of consequences they're going to instill on Will. I imagine it'll just be some sort of like apology. Maybe that's it. Which he has given. So actually, why don't I go ahead and pull that up? His apology, because I want to read it. He did. It was a no, I want to say it was a tweet, but it looks like a Facebook message. The Smiths love Facebook, don't they? So his apology says, Will Smith says, "Violence in all its forms is poisonous and destructive. My behavior at last night's Academy Awards was unacceptable and inexcusable. Jokes at my expense are part of the job, but a joke about Jada's medical condition was too much for me to bear, and I reacted emotionally. I would like to publicly apologize to you, Chris. I was out of line and I was wrong. I'm embarrassed and my actions were not indicative of the man I want to be. There is no place for violence in a world of love and kindness. I would also like to apologize to the Academy, the producers of the show, all the attendees, and everyone watching around the world. I would like to apologize to the Williams family and my King Richard my King Richard family. Speaking of family, let me put this on Do Not Disturb, fam chat. Go away. He says, I deeply regret that my behavior has stained what has been an otherwise gorgeous journey for all of us. I am a work in progress. Sincerely, Will. Which, like, I really hope that he called Chris personally before and said these things, because in my opinion, these words are as good as they could have been. But yeah. He's gonna have to make his amends in more than just a notes app apology, or like a Facebook message apology. So I'm hoping that he did, but that's neither here nor there at this point. One thing that I just noticed is, hold on, we've been at this for about 30 minutes. I don't want to jump too far ahead, so just checking in with the chat. I think y'all are just like going off because everybody's got their feelings about this. So Angie says the LAPD cannot press charges if someone doesn't want to press charges. Exactly. They could have kicked him out of the venue. The Academy could have if they wanted to. But at the time, I think it really all came down to what Chris Rock wanted. And I think Chris was very gracious in that moment. And especially too, if they're friends, which one of my patrons mentioned that they've known each other for decades. If they're friends at all, then perhaps, Chris sees something in Will and has more grace in his heart than a lot of us do, or would in that situation, though. None of us will really know what that's like to be in that situation. Yeah, in the US, you have to, you the victim, have to decide to press charges for the most part. But I was noting that I think we're seeing more and more, and I can't say that with 100% confidence, because I'm sure it's something that comes and goes with time, but I think we're seeing a lot of people in the public eye start to kind of crack under the pressure of public scrutiny. And so I really wanted to look into because I knew that there was, like, in terms of public scrutiny, that there was a lot of that swirling on around Will Smith. And I'd heard that, like, he's been embarrassed and humiliated and all of this in the recent past. So I looked into it to see, like, what has been going on. So let's go back in time and see what I think might have been some of the warning signs that something was building to get to this point. And I think there's there's a whole story there. I think there are a couple of very specific things that Will Smith said that really point towards, like, oh yeah, this was going to happen. So hashtag drink your water. Redacted says, so thank you for this conversation. I don't know what else you said. Oh, There have to be more conversations like this where people remove their ego, judgment, and bias long enough to remedy or address social issues. So thank you for this conversation. Thank you. Thank you for being here for this conversation. I really appreciate that comment. Norman sent a glass of water. Thank you. Let's see. All right. Daniela says that perhaps an apology would have been warranted if he hadn't gotten slapped. I agree. Again, I agree that comedians shouldn't have to apologize for their jokes, but like if he didn't realize it was because of a medical condition, and like if somebody's hurt by your joke, there's always room to give an apology. But of course, like, and he might have apologized to Jada for it, but it's almost like, yeah, that's why you have to, as powerful as you can be. Will Smith is a big guy. We saw he can really pack a punch. As powerful as you are and can be, you really have to learn how to hone that and to practice restraint when possible, where necessary, is what I meant to say. Because there's always certain ways that these situations can go, and that situation should have gone in the favor of the Smiths. That should have gone in their favor after the joke was made. It should have been that people sympathized with them. It should have been that they were the ones that were issued an apology, etc. But when you act out of line in reaction to something that triggered you, struck a nerve, then you flip the situation on its head, and then you're the one who ends up needing to give apologies. You're the one who's not getting what you were owed. I don't know. Of course I can't speak for the family, but I don't know that they got what they wanted out of that. They ended up embarrassing I say they, speaking for Jada and Will, because it's kind of like it reflects on their family and them as a couple. But yeah, it turns out like working out of their favor. So in terms of what's been going on, I want to look back at I'm going to time hop a little bit just because it makes sense for looking at certain situations, certain warning signs. So last year in November, a few things happened actually. There was an autobiography that Will released, a Red Table Talk. He was on Oprah. So a few things. In his autobiography, I believe it's titled Will, he talks about his father being violent. I don't want to use the word that might get me demonetized, but violent is, I think, a fair enough word to use, particularly towards his mom. And in the Red Table Talk that he did with Jada, he spoke of feelings of inadequacy. These are like red flags. Feelings of inadequacy. He says he developed unhealthy defense mechanisms. And a couple of things, he felt like a failure. And it's so interesting because looking back at Will Smith pre this situation, you're just like, this is somebody who's just like won all over all his career, just like win after win after win. And so like, it's sad to hear that people who shine so bright feel like failures in their own, when they're alone with their feelings. And so it goes to show that, mental health is doesn't discriminate. Mental illnesses and mental health issues. He said that he felt like he had failed his mother by not standing up to his father, because apparently his dad hit his mom to the point that she was like knocked out or like knocked over and bled. And I guess that's kind of just like lived with him for a long time. He felt that he failed her by not standing up to his father. So pay attention to that. And he also felt like a failure because his first marriage ended. I knew that he had been married before. He had his first son, Trey, I believe his name is, and that marriage ended, but I didn't realize that Will did not want that marriage to end. He didn't want to lose his wife. He didn't want to lose access to his kid. And he felt like a failure for it. I do want to take a note because since I don't give trigger warnings, like that much has changed about my channel. I want to take a moment to just give you the national DV domestic violence hotline, the number, just in case anybody is watching and experiencing this, or if you know anybody who's experiencing this, if you're just thinking about it, you can just jot it down, pull out your phone, notes app, or a pen and paper. The number is 1-800-799-7233. I just think that while we're talking about this, it's important to just throw that out there in case anybody's like dealing with this personally. And if you are dealing with this personally and this is too much, please feel free to just make it to the next live. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Sorry, trolls. Yeah, it was, I believe, that same month that Will also, he must have been doing a lot of press because of his book. He went on Oprah and he talked about his and Jada's open marriage. And this is going to it's going to get very sticky and very hairy. And let me be clear, I don't know the topic of open relationships and open marriages from any sort of firsthand experience. I've only ever heard of open marriages, open relationships, polyamorous, relationships, things like that, secondhand from content that I consume. But from what I have gathered is that Will and Jada talk about kind of an open marriage. So I don't know if they even use that terminology, but it almost sounds like that title was shoehorned into the situation instead of the situation being outlined out of the decision to have an open marriage. Does that make sense? It's almost like they wanted to figure out what they wanted to do or what they felt they had to do, and then let's slap a title on it. And so when talking to Oprah, de-emphasized the topic of sex or the topic or the concept of having other partners. It was like, even though, the moment you talk about somebody about having an open relationship, it's like, that's what we're going to talk about. Having sex with others, having other partners, polyamorous, being in love with others, having relationships with others. But he said in response to like what that open marriage was all about, he says that it's more of a friendship and less than a marital prison. So instead of talking about other partners, he said it's more about loving each other no matter what. And so, I noted that he referenced a separation kind of, again, with a lot of these things. It's like he talks about open marriage kind of, he talks about separation kind of. But essentially he said that they went through this period where they had to figure out how to make themselves happy. She had to figure out how to make herself happy. He had to figure out how to make himself happy and then return to the relationship so that they can make it work. Personally, in my opinion, the more I read, the more I look into this, it sounds like she needed to figure some things out. I don't know. I just get the feeling that Will Smith puts a lot of stock in the success of his marriages. And they continually say divorce is not an option. Divorce is not an option. So that in and of itself is going to put a lot of pressure on someone. If you, and a lot of people feel that way. I'm not criticizing that outlook that divorce is not an option. It's just like, I can't imagine. I'm somebody who's so fiercely independent that I don't feel that way. I am somebody who, in all honesty, my parents divorced when I was 17 years old, and I wanted them to divorce when I was 7. So I am somebody who is pro-divorce when divorce needs to happen, or at least having that option so that, your relationship doesn't become like parasitic on itself. Though there is some merit to this approach, which is like, we're going to do whatever it takes to make it work. And they have this like Will and Jada have this like strange little like chant that they do. Apparently they said it at the same time, so I'm guessing they practice it, but they're like something like, we ride together, we die together, bad marriage for life, or something like that, which I'm sure is a joke, but that's their outlook. So I made a note that he does seem a bit defensive and like not confident about this whole open marriage concept when he talks about it. And so, yeah, rumors had been swirling that he'd been repeatedly humiliated by Jada in recent years. So we're going to look back at that. I'm just checking in with the chat again. Elise says, so dislike the use of the marital prison. Yeah, I take that more as a reflection on how one of them was feeling, not necessarily what, I don't necessarily think that that is what Will Smith thinks marriage is like. Those might even be the words of his partner. This is all speculation. I don't like to speculate much, but I agree. It's an uncomfortable term to hear. Let me see. The Dalai Mama drama says, same. I disliked my parents together. I always begged my mom to divorce my dad. It sounds so sad, but yeah, I like my parents so much more apart. And guess what? They like each other so much more apart. And it's like the parents that I have now are like, oh my gosh, if I could have had you guys like this growing up, I'm not going to complain because I had it good enough. Um, but wow, there would have been a lot more space for love in my family had my parents decided to split up when they were first thinking about it, and not had some here's where I'm going to get too personal, had some family friends who I don't like, who are crazy as hell, come in and tell my parents like come to our cult church because God thinks that divorce is a sin, and so you guys need to stay together for the kids and all those things that certain people here. And then we ended up having to go to this freaking cult church for a year. And at this point I was 13 and I'm like, no, I've already figured out what I think about religion. And it makes me upset because I'm like, why believe in what you believe in and stand firmly in it so that somebody can't come along and like sway you. And we're going to talk a little bit about religion some more. But yeah, we've all got different opinions on this thing. Stephanie Luminous says the cult of Scientology probably doesn't help. Hint, that's what we were going to talk about. It's not a hint. That's just there you go. A gratuitous bit of information. That is what we're going to be talking about in terms of cults or cult-like religions. As it turns out, it's too, as far as I know, in terms of like definition of what a cult is, I think it's too soon to know whether or not Scientology is technically a cult. I think it's like too early. It has to like be a certain age or die out or something like that. But yeah, somebody else can pull up the characteristics of a cult, but like Scientology has those characteristics. So I see good call cuckoo, and I don't know what cuckoo said. So let's scroll up and see if I can find. Has anyone heard about how Scientology doctrine may have supposedly influenced Will's actions a little too? Yes, we will talk about that. But first, we're talking about the marriage between Will Smith and Jada Pinkett-Smith. So yeah, going back a little bit more, we're going to go back to July 10th of 2020. And there was a Red Table Talk in which people say that Will was a guest on Red Table Talk, but he was really supposed to be the one kind of like hosting it, where Jada was the guest on her own show so that she could speak to essentially her own behavior 4 or 5 years prior to this, when during their separation-ish, because like I said, they have a hard time really like putting words to this. It really, what it sounds like is messy marriage drama, and just like, and I don't say that in a judgmental way. I say that in the sense that like I just told you guys about some of my parents' mess. Like we all experience mess and drama and heartbreak and transgressions. We all experience it, and it almost seems to me like the Smiths are have such a squeaky clean image that they want to package it up and try to find nice little words that make it sound like it's not a bad thing what happened. And I will say I'm very disappointed in Jada Pinkett-Smith, because I don't know if it's that need to keep that squeaky clean image for their family, or if it's just pride, or I think it's quite possible that those two things are so similar that it's both. But she essentially confirmed that she had an entanglement. Again, these people cannot call things what they are. If it's an open marriage, it's an open marriage. If it's a separation, it's a separation. If it's a relationship, it's a relationship. And Will Smith, that he did call her out on that. She said that she had an entanglement with a family friend. Now, this family friend, at the time of this interview, was 27 years old. His name is August Alsina. I think I pronounced that right. August Alsina. Um, he is a rapper, singer that was a friend of the family, not that much older than their kids. Um, so he would have been around 22, 23 years old when this happened. And they talked about how he came into their lives. They described him, Will and Jada described him as being very quote unquote sick. And then the more I looked into it, the more I found out that, August had been open about this situation. And apparently he was very like hopelessly addicted to painkillers, was dealing with a lot of really bad mental health struggles. And so they took him in, the family took him in, tried to help get him help, get him better. And it was at that time that they're very funny about how they like outline the situation. Like they don't give a clear timeline, but basically it was around this time that the Smiths were separated-ish, or broken up-ish, or whatever you want to call it. They were giving each other space, I think, is one of the words that Will has used. And during that time, that's when Jada says that she entered a quote-unquote entanglement with August. And she said that she tried to heal herself with the relationship with August by healing him. And, that he ended up, and the young guy, ended up ending the relationship, and she realized that that was for the best. And Will joked, he kind of joked about feeling like, these are my words, not his, but joked about feeling like a cuck in the media, like in the press. He says, like, I feel like, I'm in the media, standing here next to my wife while she talks about her transgressions. But Jada's not owning these things as transgressions. She talks about it as if like these are things that I had to do in order to find me, blah, 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 blah. And then they joked about Will, quote unquote, getting her back. So like, talk to anybody I will say, I know this much about open relationships. Talk to people in open relationships. And if it's functioning and it's a healthy open relationship, people aren't trying to quote unquote get back at each other for having other partners. So that's another reason that this whole situation is, again, you're shoehorning a title into a situation because you want to make it look and sound prettier than it actually is, in my opinion. Coffee bean. Leisha's look is always so on point. Really appreciate the aesthetic. Thank you. Let's take a moment. Jake and I had our anniversary, our 4-year anniversary, as well as his birthday, as well as his 8-year anniversary with Moses, his cat, all on Saturday. On the 26th is the big day that we do everything. And he's learned how to buy me jewelry that I like, costume jewelry. But these earrings I think are beautiful. I had just gotten this necklace in that day, and I was like, oh, I love this necklace. And it was like geometric. These are geometric. So I also got this romper in the mail, and I was like, hey, it's kind of like Oscars, right? It's a little bit more on the glam side. Let's go for it. Sophisticated chic. But thank you. And thank you, Cuckoo, for wishing me congrats. Oh, dude, V, we are... I don't even care about what is the website? WikiView doesn't even care about me. We're barefoot just about every single day, whenever we can be. And sometimes I'll wear out shoes with my outfits, and then I take them right off because you can't even see them on this show. So thank you guys. Thank you everybody for the well wishes. You guys are sweet. I like you today. I like y'all 82 of y'all. I like you. Marissa says, oh, I missed you. I love having you back. I love being back for you. Thank you. I want to be honest with you guys, because I was thinking about this, but I didn't want to say this right out the gate because I want to get better at like talking about the topic at the beginning of each show. But I was like, I wonder if I was like, it was probably 30 minutes before. And I always look forward to this. Don't get me wrong. Like I look forward to Tuesdays, especially if I have a topic, and I decided on this topic yesterday and I was like, ooh, good topic. We're going to have a good discussion. But then like in the hour or two beforehand, you start to have this like sense of doom. And so I'm like, I wonder if like Jimmy Fallon every night before he goes on stage, like has a moment where he's like, why am I doing this? They hate me. They hate me. What am I doing? Why am I going out there? And so like I wonder if that's a universal experience because I've heard other people talking about it, but you get a little nervous. And then I get a little nervous and I wonder like how much everybody's gonna hate me when I get on camera, and then I talk to you guys, and you're really wonderful, so thank you. I'm gonna read one more comment. Cuckoo says, "Hey, did you both have cats before you got together? If so, how difficult was it to get them to used to each other?" Oh, that's a good question, and I'm probably gonna have to tell more in like a Q&A, but it was not good. It was not good because he had a cat, I had 2 cats. Actually, I had 3. So by that time, I was maxed out on cats. I was at crazy cat lady point for having a small apartment in DC. And his cat came in and didn't get along with 2 of mine. So I had a little girl cat, little tiny Layla. Layla Unplugged was her name, and she was just like peeing everywhere. She would pee on me and Jake. She would cuddle up on us in the bed and then pee on us. That was after we had already washed all of our bedding because she peed on it. And then we're on the bare mattress trying to sleep and she pees on us. And then she peed on the couch, the leather couch that was brand new. And so now that has a big, like I've cleaned it up, but it's got a big stain from where I cleaned it. Brand new leather couch. And so, but it just so happened the timing was just perfect because Christina, my best friend, and I, we're also looking super chic, sophisticated chic, New Year's Eve 2016, 2017. Um, they had bonded so much in the time that we lived together that like Christina was so sad without Layla. And so I was really sad. I was walking, I was like, can you hold on to Layla for a little bit, see how it goes so we can adjust to this new apartment? And I was crying when I was taking Layla to drop her off with Christina, and then the 2 of them, they're just made for each other. And so they're still together. I still get to see them when I visit Christina. I still get to talk to Layla when we FaceTime. And then Moses would just beat up Oliver all the time. He was developing diabetes and losing a lot of weight, so he was like not winning these fights. And so we have just had to learn how to keep them apart from each other. And so whenever we move somewhere, I have to make sure that I've mapped out a way to fence off areas for Moses and for Oliver. So that's what we've done here is they've like half the apartment or like 2/3 of the apartment is on the side of 2 baby gates. And then the other third is on the other side. And they finally gotten to the point where I think they're both afraid of each other, that they like to stay away from each other. They don't like it when the gates open. They get like nervous. And Atticus, we call him the little diplomat. He's not an alpha, so he gets along with everybody. So yeah, we also call him our little athlete because he can jump that. We got the highest baby gate we could find, and he jumps that thing, and then he'll go play with Moses sometimes. So it is a struggle. It is a struggle, and I have to give Oliver insulin shots twice a day, and it's a thing. But I love them. I'm not having kids, so I figure it's got to be easier than that. So anyway, where were we? Thank you for asking about the cats. Yeah, so we were talking about how they had this conversation, this red table talk, where Jada talks about this entanglement to this relationship, this affair, whatever you want to call it, with August, and she was later criticized not only for humiliating Will in this situation. I really think she could have done a better job at showing remorse for what she had done, but she didn't. And I think that was by design. I think that if she'd shown remorse, and again, it would have been an admission of a fault for something. And I think and I don't think it's necessarily just Jada, but I do think that them as a family or as a couple want to maintain a certain kind of image. So like if she shows guilt or remorse, then that's some sort of sign that like their marriage may not be perfect, which like we on the outside can tell that it's not. But more importantly to me was the criticism she received about taking advantage of August, who was in a very vulnerable spot at that time. And that I agree with. And that to me is that's more heartbreaking. I don't It's pretty heartbreaking if you think about it in terms of an affair that she had, but you're talking about a kid, because you're 22, 23 years old dealing with people who are like 50, right? Or near 50 at that time. And he's struggling with addiction issues and mental health issues. And you think that's the time to start your quote unquote entanglement? Any sort of relationship? No. We've talked a lot about how, relationships, dating, and all that is frowned upon early on in recovery. But you're really talking about when somebody like swoops in on somebody who is trying to get better, and he really, not only was he in a vulnerable spot, but he was vulnerable in the hands of this person who was taking care of him. That's what really kind of disgusts me about the whole situation. And I do have some grace for Jada, because people in general don't have all this knowledge about best practices when it comes to addiction recovery. So perhaps she doesn't know that, getting engaged in some sort of relationship or quote unquote entanglement is a bad idea for somebody who's trying to get sober, clean and sober. Um, Perhaps she doesn't know that that's a bad practice, but either way, you're taking somebody in such a vulnerable place and basically using them as your like little toy, your little plaything to like get your rocks off while you're unhappy in your marriage, so you can go quote unquote heal yourself. It's no, no, no. I think it's, if it is fine for us to go in front of the public and say it's, predatory or gross when a 50-year-old man tries to take on a 20-year-old girlfriend. I have slightly different opinions on situations like that now than I did like 6 months ago. I'm not so much of the mindset that we should stop it from happening. I think adults are adults, and adults have agency, and if it's unhealthy, then let them do the unhealthy thing. Just like 20-year-olds are going to go to parties and binge drink. That's not good for them either, but I'm not going to tell them like that they can't do that. Um, and that's illegal. We're talking about things that are not even illegal. But still, I think our society is still pretty comfortable looking at people, men who are around 50 or so, and women who are around 20, 22, and saying like, no, that's predatory. Cut it out. Stop it. There's something wrong with that. And I think we should be able to say the same about women going after young men slash nearly boys. Again, he was technically an adult, so I'm not going to say that they really did anything, certainly not illegal. And I don't know if I don't know that is isolated in a vacuum. Those situations or those factors in and of themselves, where I would like judge them too harshly on them if it weren't for the fact that he was trying to get clean. That's fucked. That's fucked, Jada. I don't know. The more I talk about it, the more it makes me mad. So, Cuckoo says, is August famous in any way? If not, then there's also a fame, uh, renown, power dynamic. I don't know. I'd never heard of him before this situation. He is a singer, but also like he's famous now because there were even pictures of him on the red carpet somewhere with Jada, and then they're like, we don't know how the public found out about this. What? What are you talking about? You were in pictures with him, dude, and not like paparazzi photos. Like you were posing with him. And it was him. He was the person who kind of like out quote unquote outed their relationship. But again, they're in photos together. But he did an interview where he talked about the relationship, and like he said that he got permission from Will, and then the Smiths talked about how that didn't exactly happen, but like to clarify, everybody understood that there was like consent given to this dynamic, at least with Will Smith. But I don't know that like I don't want to be that person. Like I caught up on the whole Modern Warrior and Chelsea and all those girls that he's like the dude's a fuck boy around. I don't want to blur the lines on what consent means, because I think it's kind of messed up when people like take it too far and they say like, well, I didn't consent to being cheated on, so therefore it is, SA. I don't agree with that. But that kind of conversation does kind of erupt or come to the surface when you're talking about like how informed or how capable, how much of his agency did this young guy have while he was still getting better. Certainly if they were hooking up when he was high, like, and they knew that he was on some stuff, like that's like wrong. That is possibly illegal. But either way, it's just so messed up. I could talk about it for days. You were just thinking what, Elise? I said a lot of words. Let's see. Yeah, and so shortly thereafter, in a GQ interview, Will told GQ that he had other affairs. Oh, giving Woundlands vibes. Yeah, for sure. Except for I'm more in the favor of this August person who's really not, as far as I know, speaking out in his own defense. So I'm doing it for him, talking about consent for him. Not that it's my place, but I do like to educate my audience on addiction and addiction recovery. So in that sense, it is my place. It's also my channel where I give my opinions on things. Jada was his caretaker in a sense. Like, no, I don't know if necessarily like in a legal sense, like medical, caregiver or anything like that. But he came to their family very sick, is how they described him. That is how the Smiths described him. They said he came into our family very, very sick. He needed to be healed. I got engaged in this entanglement with him. Doesn't sound like somebody you should get entangled with, Jada. Even if you were your age. But yeah, and then shortly thereafter, Will told GQ that he had other affairs, and a lot of people were saying that like it seemed like he was doing that to really kind of like repair his ego and to maybe like settle the score a little bit, but it was just kind of something where people were just like, ugh. Again, he just seems like a man humiliated. So let's fast forward. It does sound predatory. For sure does. October 27th of 2021. Jada has another Red Table Talk, and this time she's talking to Gwyneth Paltrow. Don't know why you're going to let all of this happen for Gwyneth Paltrow, but she has a conversation with Gwyneth Paltrow about sex life in marriage, feeling unsatisfied, needing to learn how to communicate about that sort of bedroom stuff. And again, Jada was criticized again for humiliating Will, which this gets to the point where I'm like, yeah, I see it. But I also think like once the train starts moving, it's hard to get it to stop, because if they had placed this in a vacuum and they had that conversation and none of this had gone on, then like I don't know that many people would be thinking about it like that. And other people were also on the side of saying like she's just talking honestly about marriage. But some people were saying that not only did she humiliate Will again, but she's seemingly unhappy with him, which I think that is a little more evidenced by the relationship that she had with August. And the fact that Will is so vehement about making the marriage work. Divorce is not an option. We got to make it work. We got to get happy so we can get back together and make sure that we do this and stay together till we die. It's sad. It's really sad. And Will, yeah, he not only has he always said divorce is not an option, but he's also described marriage as the most quote unquote difficult, grueling, and excruciating thing that they'd ever taken on. Which, like, I know that it can be that at times, but that shouldn't be your primary descriptor of your marriage. I don't think. I'm like, who am I to say I'm not married? But again, I'm not married because I'm trying to be smart about, like who I decide to spend the rest of my life with. We're buying a house. So we'll get married at some point. But I am in a long-term relationship, and I think that, yeah, there are times where it does feel like that, but that should not be your primary descriptor of your relationship. Whew. So on March 11th of 2022, so very recently, this month, Will had an interview with Gayle King, and he claimed that there was no infidelity in their marriage. And Gayle seemed taken aback. And again, if we were talking about a very kind of like conventional open marriage situation, then Gayle King would be in the wrong to be like, huh? What? No infidelity? I don't, what? That doesn't make sense to me, which was kind of her reaction. But based on what we know about this relationship, and like I said, how hurt people were by the relationships that each party had outside the marriage, like it doesn't feel like a lack of fidelity entirely, at least to me. So I can see why it would seem that way to Gayle King. Daniela says, I guess infidelity to them means that the other person doesn't know what's going on. Smart. I like that. Yeah, because he says that like consent was given by all parties, but then he didn't exactly give his blessing to like his wife to have that entanglement, but like he doesn't seem happy about it, or else why would they have to have this whole talk about it? So he did make it clear that everybody knew what was going on. But yeah, like is that what defines infidelity? I don't know. That's up for, I guess, you guys to decide. Hell yeah, Rosie. Happy for you. You are growing. We're proud of you. Seriously. Wonderful, amazing, beautiful, just like you. Redacted says it's a slippery slope for people to say or speculate on the humiliation bit fueling Will. As we aren't involved, they could very well talk about the contents of the show before episodes air, for sure. And I do kind of make the same point in my notes. Excuse me. I would be pretty confident that they talked about this before the show airs. I don't think that they were surprising each other. Or do you, unless you mean like the whole like talk bedroom talk. Maybe they talk about what she's going to talk about on her episodes of her show, and maybe they don't. It's difficult to say whether or not the public can say if somebody's humiliated or not, because while humiliation is a very personal thing to feel, it also oftentimes really does involve the public. It involves shame, it involves embarrassment, and that involves other people. So, but again, yeah, I later said, oh, it's my next note. I said many believe that they are forcing their relationship and that it's not truly open, but only they know their marriage. To Redacted's point, I said that we can look at the evidence and we can postulate about what's happening, but only they know. So yes, let's make this very clear. Only they know what's going on in this relationship. Maybe these words to me sound funny and they sound, like I said, shoehorned, and they sound like they're forcing something that, into little neat boxes, but maybe it is those things. At least to them, I can't say for sure. That's why I try to make it clear when I said that it seems that way, or we're speculating, or we're postulating, and things like that. So, I always try to preach about being clear about when you're, not sure about something, but you're speculative. So my takeaway from this portion of the conversation is that a couple of things that we do know. So like I said, we can't know all of those things about their relationship. What we do know, though, is that Will has confirmed his feelings of inadequacy. He has confirmed he's developed unhealthy coping skills. He has confirmed that he feels like a failure with his divorce of his first wife, and that he feels like a cuck. That's the best way that I can describe what he described. He talks a lot about feelings of failure and kind of anxiety over making his marriage work, as, like I said, divorce is not an option. So just think about how much pressure this can put on a person. Divorce is not an option. Divorce is not an option. I got divorced once. It was a failure. It made me a failure. I was a failure. I also, my dad did all these things to my mom, and I didn't step up, and I didn't, pull a Marvin Gaye on him, and I didn't take care of my mom and stand up to my dad, and I didn't do these things. There's a lot of pressure he's placing on himself to be the perfect husband and father. But in the scope of this conversation, particularly the perfect husband that keeps his wife happy, that looks after her, that stands up for her, etc. So now we talk about the Scientology connection to all of this. And I want to be very clear, while I'm going to go into the Scientology connection, we don't know that the Smiths, how connected they are to the Church of Scientology. We know that they have friends within the church. They've denied being Scientologists. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I'm going to talk about Scientology, but don't get too married to the idea that whatever he did had anything to do with Scientology. Speculation. I am speculating, okay, to be clear, that there might be some sort of connection between what he did on Sunday night to Chris Rock and some sort of like influence from the Church of Scientology. So going back, it's funny you say the word dabbled, Elise. I'm going to talk about that word. I did use that word on Discord earlier. Join my Patreon, patreon.com/HelloLeash. We talk about these things. It's a good time. In 2018, Leah Remini accused the Smiths of being Scientologists because of a connection they had to Tom Cruise. It was like some sort of event that he put on. It was like an adult maze or something like that, and they attended. And Leah was like, "They must be Scientologists." And then later, Jada defended herself in them. By saying that, like, no, it was just like this little thing for kids, and like we just brought our kids and it was a good time. So who knows? But I will say 2018, Leah Remini was my shit. That I even like doxed the shit out of myself when I started my channel and told you guys that I was like, my apartment, not only was my apartment building right next to the Scientology Center, not center, but like it was like their international affairs or public, something like that. Some Scientology building was like right next to my apartment. They had a security camera that faced in to it faced inwards towards my bathroom. And then one time Jake found a lady that came from the Scientology church, came over and was like holding an iPad into our window. So did the thought of Scientology coming after me after I say something on publicly? Yeah. Them coming after me, like that thought has passed my mind. Yeah. It's gone through my head a little bit. We used to joke, Jake and I used to joke that the Church of Scientology was going to come for me because of all of the Leah Remini and anti-Scientology kind of content that I was consuming. I was watching a lot of documentaries about it, like Going Clear and any other documentary that was made about Scientology. I was reading Leah Remini's book. I think it's called Rebel, something like that. Her show as well. I was reading a lot about it. And then, they were right next door. So we used to joke like, oh, they're going to come for you. Maybe they did. But now here I am on a public forum talking to 80 people about Scientology. So yeah, so Leah Remini came to Red Table Talk as a guest, and they kind of tried to hash this out a little bit. I didn't love it. I didn't love what I saw of it, and here's why. Leah talks about the concept of fair gaming in Scientology, and she says that fair game calls for utter destruction of critics. And she kind of talks about the first couple of steps in fair gaming someone. Like the first step is you laugh things off that people say, like it's boring or it's silly. Then the second step is to discredit them. And Leah got the impression that Jada was doing those steps to Leah. So that really gave her the impression that she was a Scientologist. And then they cleared it up, said that wasn't the case. And then kind of just like rewinding a little bit, Jada did talk about or tweeted about whether or not they're Scientologists. Because this has been something that people have been wondering for a while. Like I said, they're good friends apparently with Tom Cruise, and possibly other Scientologists. And Jada tweeted, this is super important, super important, super important. I have studied Dianetics and appreciate the merits of study tech, but I am not a Scientologist. She opened a school with the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard, with Dianetics and study tech, whatever that is. And as far as I know, they had access to coursework that Scientologists at high levels have. And I don't doubt that the Church of Scientology, oh yeah, there was also on my block, there was like the L. Ron Hubbard house. It was like one of his first houses or something like that. It was weird. It was on a Scientology block in DC. I don't doubt that they might give access. Like these books, if you didn't know, cost, I think the whole course, it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for each Scientology member, except for those that enrolled in the Sea Org, which is like Scientology's kind of like their military. That's kind of really the only way that people were able to do, quote unquote, do Scientology for free. Otherwise, people were just like giving Scientology all of their money, taking out like maxing out their lines of credit to give money to the church. And they would pay a lot for this coursework, and it would be like $9,000 this year, $10,000 that year. And it was just like coursework after coursework, all these books. And so it usually costs a good bit to get these courses. Not that the Smiths can't pay for that with their gazillions of dollars, but Scientology does place a lot of value in celebrities. That is why we saw them really like, as far as I understand, like they really like made John Travolta the celebrity he is. We saw that they really like have treasured Tom Cruise as like their poster boy. They love the power of celebrity. They have a celebrity center, and that is because like celebrities are who Americans look to, the population in general, but particularly Americans. And so they want to target celebrities to bring them in, or to appeal to celebrities so that celebrities will go and spread the word about their church and all of its merits. So I don't doubt that they could have gotten this coursework for free. I don't doubt that it's possible that they could just be like, that they might not be Scientologists, but that they're like, but then I have to ask myself, because she says that she really just, she being Jada, has been like exploring and appreciating various religions. But I have to ask myself, it's almost like, I'm going to make this comparison. Scientology, please don't come for me. But like meth, like something like meth, like crystal meth. Can you really just like do it socially? Can you really just like dabble in it? It makes me wonder, can you really just dabble in Scientology? Is that possible? Because I will tell you this much, like, especially if it is a cult, that is I think a lot of people have joked like that they're going to go to Scientology. If you don't know this, a lot of times they start with like advertising a quote unquote free personality test. And when I lived in DC, they would give us these little flyers for a free personality test. And you come by and you give them your voucher, and they give you a personality test. And the personality test tells you, essentially areas that you need to work on. They take your levels, you hold on to the little cans, and they give you like, it reads your levels. Like, it'll tell you your levels are off the charts and you need to work on that. And that's really kind of how they hook a lot of people, is by giving them this. Now they do it with a personality test. It's such a slippery slope, because I've also learned about like the practices they take in terms of like, basically they have taken practices for very very pushy salesman types of practices. They like, Leah Remini even talks about like the checkout window at the Scientology center or whatever on your way out. Like if you're like, no, thank you, don't think I'm going to do this. They have practiced overcoming objections, every single objection a person could give, as to why they do not want to proceed with the next step, they have found ways of like combating that argument. And especially when we're talking about brainwashing happening within the church, all you are one proud and hubris laden motherfucker if you think that you cannot be brainwashed by a cult. And in fact, I would venture to say a lot of the people who have that much hubris and think that they cannot be brainwashed by a cult are the ones that are probably most likely to be that. And that is the reason that while a lot of people joke about how they're going to go step into the Church of Scientology and tell them what they think, I was never going to freaking do that. Never. We're never going to take that personality test. And Jake and I agreed, never stepping foot into that place because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what some huge system, what power it could have over one person's brain. And it's scary. So that's why I have to wonder, how possible is it that the Smiths just kind of dabble in Scientology? And you can say that they're not dabbling in Scientology, but Dianetics is almost synonymous with Scientology. It is the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard. So they're dabbling in the teachings of the founder of this church. So, random person, you said you can be humorous without using it to hide your bigoted ideology. I wonder what you mean, because I said I'd use the word hubris. I wonder if that sounded like humorous. I said hubris, meaning like just having such high opinions of yourself that you think that you're, it's a Greek term, as powerful as the gods. Let me see. So kind of going back to this red table talk with Leah Remini, Jada, I hated this, and I didn't watch the whole episode. I will go back probably and watch it. I just didn't have time with all of this research I was doing. But in responding to Leah, Jada supported Leah's quest to find Shelly Miscavige. Shelly Miscavige. If you're not aware of who Shelly Miscavige is, David Miscavige is the chairman of, like, he's in charge of the Church of Scientology right now. And many years ago, his wife just kind of went missing. And nobody knows where the hell she is. And if you're interested in that stuff, I highly recommend looking into. I haven't watched the third season of Leah's show because it started to change the format, but watch the first season of her show, and I don't remember what the show's called, and or read her book, because it's really interesting when they talk about like the base they have in Hemet, California, and like the really like scary stuff that goes on in there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but like the like straight up like abuse that people have endured at the hands of David Miscavige, the chairman of Scientology, and others. Like they commit acts of violence on each other in as a way to discipline each other. I've heard things about like how they've had to like clean floors with their tongue, like stuff like that, like bathroom floors, like just disgusting stuff, as discipline. And like there are certain places like bases, like Scientology bases, where it's near impossible for people to get out. So, Leah was, because she was a celebrity and they value celebrities, of course, their standing in the church is higher. And so she was friends with Shelly, who is the wife of the chairman. And she just like couldn't get in touch with her anymore. Stopped hearing from her. There was always an excuse whenever she would try to call Shelly, stopped receiving like Christmas cards and stuff like that. They, as far as I know, they still, a lot of them celebrate Christmas, I believe. But then she started to get, I think, and that might have been one of the really like contributing factors to Leah breaking out of the church. But she's really been on a hunt to like find out where the hell this lady is. So 'Cause as far as I know, they've tried to send, like, wellness checks and stuff, welfare checks on Shelly, and, like, somebody will just answer the door and be like, Shelly's here, she's fine," or "Shelly's on vacation, she's fine." And then the police can't do anything. Um, but if you know anything about Leah Remini and the work that she's done around Scientology, she's doing so much more than just trying to find out where did Shelley go. So in this Red Table Talk, Jada supported Leah's quest to find Shelley, but that was it. Like she didn't seem to like express any support for Leah's other work. Like which is like essentially discrediting Scientology and really exposing it for what it is. She is doing a lot of work to expose the Church of Scientology, and I didn't really get that from Jada. Didn't hear her express that. Not that she has to, not that anybody has to support that, but just interesting choice of words to be like, well, I support you looking for Shelly. I support you looking for your friend. But in terms of your other work, like your actual like the meat of your body of work, we're just not going to talk about that. And it's not because I'm a Scientologist, because I'm not. Something seems a little off. Something's off. Ugh. I am a tangent queen. I sure am, and we love it. Thought we were talking about Will Smith. What's this? Yeah, it's related. We got this. We're going there. It's all related. In fact, I'm talking about Jada Smith, am I not? And then also there was just another interview where Leah talked a little bit more about fair game, how like basically the definition is to destroy utterly, whether that be physically or mentally. Anything can be done to destroy the person that you are fair gaming. So that could be going for their job, going for their reputation. Now, like I said, in Scientology, there's a lot of physical acts of violence this really isn't a tangent. It all ties together. They commit these acts of physical violence, though they don't typically do that so much in the eyes of the public. But also searching Scientology and physical violence, there was an essay by somebody. Oh, I meant to look up how this is pronounced. This essay is by Attila Miklovich from the somebody here knows how to pronounce this better than I do. University of Sciences, Department of Religious Studies. They did a whole essay on Scientology and physical violence, but just like one bit of information that was found was that Scientology, if you Google the terms Scientology and physical violence, you get 2.1 million hits. So, this all kind of goes back to a tweet by Max Burns. So Max Burns is an advocacy communicator and a columnist. And he talked about the connection between Will Smith and Scientology and physical violence. So love that dirty water. There's your connection. I hope you feel satisfied. You will be satisfied. Okay, so Max Burns. This is a little bit of a thread, but it's interesting. Again, keep in mind, we don't know. We don't know for sure if Scientology plays a role in what happened on Sunday night or how much, but it's interesting. It's interesting because this is what I want you to consider. It's possible that Will Smith is just under a lot of pressure, just real life, normal, everyday person pressure. He's not an everyday person, but he is in ways. The problems he talks about are everyday people problems. But also, if they are involved with the Church of Scientology, then the behavior that we saw Sunday night is more indicative of something that might become a bigger problem. Because we have seen really like unhinged and outlandish behavior from people like Tom Cruise, who has been more one to like verbally attack somebody. Like we've heard him like verbally attack Matt Lauer in an interview, and in general just acting very strange. So that's where the whole Scientology conversation comes into play, and it's something that I think I sure hope they're not that enmeshed with the Church of Scientology. So Max Burns says Scientology is not big on speaking freely, as Chris Rock learned. The slap is much less interesting when you realize Will Smith almost certainly went through the Scientology courses that teach you to unapologetically use slaps and physical force to let a fellow Scientologist know they've done something wrong. There's a Scientology course, I guess you'd call it, that involves slapping / physically humiliating fellow Scientologists in a group setting as a means of exerting superiority. It is remarkably common within the cult. Again, your connection. There's your connection, dirty water. Tom Cruise does a similar thing, but his preferred method is shouting and intense personality intimidation of movie crews. Scientologists he feels aren't fulfilling KSW ideology. He didn't mention also just like how he's talked to like people like Matt Lauer. It's rare you see the physical side of it in so public a forum. It's the fact that under Scientology, Smith's slap of Rock was the only acceptable response to what Rock did. In Scientology, inaction over disrespect is in itself grounds to get yourself slapped by a higher ranking Scientologist. And Smith certainly feels he did right. I mean, he's a columnist. I don't think you should be speaking in absolutes when you don't know the person. I don't like this. This dude is speculating, guys. Just keep that in mind. Still interesting, but keep in mind, people talk in absolutes when they don't know, and I hate, you guys know that. Oh, it started back when I first expressed on my channel that I didn't like Creepshow Art because she did that. And then the world came to not like Creepshow Art. Much like Tom Cruise apologizing half-heartedly for berating his Mission Impossible crew, Smith knows that his apology is for them, us, because you aren't in the enlightened place to understand why Scientology says this was the right thing to do. And as with Cruise and COVID masking, Cruise's concern wasn't his own health, since he is in the belief that he can't get sick with human diseases. It's about making sure other Scientologists see that Smith was unafraid to live KSW, which is keeping Scientology working, ideology in public. And just remember, the Smiths funded and managed an entire Scientology school, the New Village Leadership Academy in California, to continue pushing this violent, insane ideology out to young people. Congrats on the Academy Award, Will. Don't send Scientology after me again. Oof, that's scary. And to those who would argue New Village Leadership Academy is not Scientologist, and the Smiths just decided to spend over $1 million opening the school for other reasons, you find me in a non-Scientology academy that includes L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics as coursework. And let's be clear, Tom Cruise does the exact same thing, though he uses verbal abuse in public instead of actually hitting a non-Scientologist. It's called using the tone scale to promote compliance, and it's a foundational part of Scientology. Folks, I am glad my years-long fascination with Scientology has paid off with a useful thread. Have a great day, and if I disappear, go ask the Scientologist. Same. So... Oh, thank you, Shelby, for providing the link. Thank you. I forget sometimes that you can actually link people in the chat. I wonder if you have to be a mod in order to do that without it getting flagged. But yeah, that's 69 viewers. For a second there it was. Redacted says, thank you for not speaking in absolutes. So many forget this and assume to know more than those actually involved. So many videos out there like that, and it's a red flag. Yeah, it's a big problem. It's something that I'm not trying to beef myself up. It's just something I very firmly believe in. I'm very literal. And I believe very, very firmly that if you're going to speak on speculation or opinion, that you make that clear. Or at least don't use language like, like how I'll say like, I'm sure. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can't say I'm sure unless I know. I can't say that I'm sure about how somebody else feels unless I've spoken those words. But we're kind of stuck in this situation where we're like, we don't know the Smiths to be Scientologists because they have said, we are not Scientologists, or at least Jada has. But then, like Max Burns points out, what are the odds that you can spend over $1 million opening a school to teach Dianetics and the coursework of Scientology if you're not Scientologists? I don't buy. I mean, it's possible, but I don't buy it. It's possible, but I don't necessarily buy it. It's possible that Jada Pinkett-Smith is just fascinated with Dianetics and appreciates Dianetics. But again, I don't know that it is how possible it is to just dabble in this stuff. And so that makes me sad because it's really hard for me to, and I give people the benefit of the doubt where I can. And I'm trying to. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. The Smiths are like America's sweetheart family. I love them. I want to continue loving them. I want to support them. But how do I reconcile these connections to Scientology without believing that they are Scientologists? And if we pull on that thread and say, okay, let's assume that the Smiths are likely Scientologists or Scientology adjacent a good bit, then what are the projected outcomes we could see from Will Smith after this situation? Are we going to see him, like we saw John Travolta on the stage of offering him his award with Uma Thurman? But if they are Scientologists, or if they are going to continue seeking therapy through Scientology, I worry that we're going to see more erratic and violent behavior. That's what I'm getting at. More erratic and violent behavior. Not unlike we've seen with Tom Cruise. However, is this going to be a situation where Will Smith takes a step back, looks at his behavior, and looks at all of these things like I've laid out, the warning signs that led up to this situation, and says, wait, I need therapy. Not only do I need therapy, but we need marriage counseling, because we were in an open marriage, kind of separated, kind of like there was consent, so there was no infidelity, kind of like it's not cutting it. So I just see kind of one of two paths. There's a million different paths they could take. Like they could snap their fingers and then just everything be better, or snap their fingers and everything be worse. They could go private. They could, they might, like, so many different things could happen. But I'm really like foreseeing one of two options. One being traditional, not necessarily traditional, but traditional in the sense of using the word therapy, meaning what you guys know to be therapy and counseling, or Scientology. In which case I don't see, because Scientology has its quote unquote merits do involve certain forms of therapy and counseling. They do have certain practices and teachings that teach people how not to be reactionary, basically. And so if they are Scientologists, I could absolutely see Will Smith having to end up doing coursework in order to work on. They do basically exposure therapy. That's like a big thing that they do. Is like they'll say the thing that triggers you, and then you have your response, and then like they'll sit across a desk from somebody, and then they'll say the thing again that triggers you, and they'll keep saying. Then maybe you'll fight back tears, and then they say it again and again and again and again until you don't have a response. It's one of the practices they use in their therapy, quote unquote therapy. So yeah, I don't know. This is the conclusion of my video. Like that's what I think has been going on with Will Smith. Of course, we don't know, because all I know is the bits of information I was able to grab from the internet. We also, like I said, with his marriage with Jada, only they know what's been going on in their marriage. But with what's been shared with us, it's messy, and the outcome feels bleak, though I do believe they love each other. I believe Will loves his wife. I believe that he loves his family. I believe that he wants his family to be well. So now The question is just in his hands. How are you going to handle this moving forward? I appreciate the apology he gave. Like I said, I hope that he gave it personally to Chris Rock before putting it out publicly. It's as good an apology as a public apology can be. It's going to be ripped to shreds. People are not going to be happy with it. That's just the nature of public apologies go. But yeah, I'm curious to see where this goes from here. This is interesting, but I feel like it's a lot easier to jump to, hey, you're talking about my wife's inability to grow hair like it's a joke than it is to connect to Scientology. Well, sure. I mean, because it's very like, first of all, that is a first degree deduction, right? Like we know, we know with 99.9% accuracy that Will Smith was responding to a joke about his wife's hair, right? Like we know, we pretty much know that. The whole connection to Scientology, as I've made very clear, is something that is unclear. We don't know for sure. What we're discussing is the possibility of the Church of Scientology and its teachings is that something that's possibly impacting this man's behavior and his coping mechanisms with stress and public humiliation? That is the question. The question is are we starting to finally see the toxicity that Scientology brings? Are we starting to see that manifest in the Smiths? Because the big question, which like you might not have signed up for the conversation, but I'm here having it, which is part of this discussion is, are the Smiths Scientologists? And to what degree are they enmeshed with the Church of Scientology? And if they are, then how much is the Church of Scientology impacting the way they cope with things? Because that could tell you a lot about the direction that these people could be headed in, which is an interesting conversation. And that's why we're having it. So yeah, it's definitely more of a stretch, as I've made very, very clear. But it's not out of the realm of possibility, or else we wouldn't be talking about it. And I would be the first person to mention it, and I was not, as we saw this tweet from Max Burns, which has at this point 813 retweets. So and 472 quote tweets. So it's like it's definitely a conversation on people's minds. There's a lot of conditions that need to be met for this to make sense to me. Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's just a sad situation. It's just a sad situation. Let's see. I'm going to read a couple more of your messages. Except for some of these, I need the context, so I don't know what everyone's talking about. When you guys are talking about collaborations, it would be so awesome. Lucia's Fair commentary with Ant. And Ant. Is Ant somebody who does tarot card readings? I don't know that I so much agree with people who do tarot card readings on other people, even though I have, before I knew better, I have asked somebody to do a tarot card reading on somebody that I was making commentary on. And then I was like, oh, I found out that is unethical. You're not supposed to do readings on people without their permission. I don't even know if that's what y'all are talking about. I shouldn't jump to, and I don't want to upset y'all by just being like, your idea, I don't like it. Monica says, yeah, I think it's clear that this was not Alicia's theory. She's only visiting this theory because it was already made. Yeah, and it's my thoughts on I mean, I could have come to this theory on my own, but I think it's just supported, the validity of it is supported by the fact that other people have thought this too, you know? Jessica says, I didn't know they funded a whole school. I didn't either. I didn't know that until I saw that tweet from Max Burns. And then again, doing my research today and yesterday, this whole school that was like, teaching Dianetics and stuff, like, fuck that. If I open a school, nope, we are not. I might tell you what Scientology is, but we are not going into their coursework and learning their ways. And I'm sure that's the thing, is I've talked to Jake about this. I'm sure that there's a lot of like effective stuff that they do, effective therapy, and that's probably how they reel people in, which is again why I am not going to mess with it, because I'm sure that there is something attractive about what they do in the beginning. Leah Remini talks about this, that there's a lot that they do that makes you feel good. in the beginning. And then it's easy to get hooked on this stuff. And like, God, God, please save the Smiths. Please save the Smiths. I really hope that they, not just that they're not Scientologists, but that they understand the danger of being that close to Scientology. If you can't be friends with John Travolta and Tom Cruise without having to give merit and money to Dianetics and Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's teachings and all of that, then those aren't friends. So I'm not saying that like I think that they should ditch their friends. I just think that hopefully you can be friends with your friend without having to adopt their religion. However, we know with Scientology, that's kind of hard. It's kind of difficult. Like, it's, as far as I know, like, you can be friends. Scientologists can be friends with non-Scientologists, but they can't be friends with people who speak poorly on Scientology, which leads back to Jada's comment about, oh yeah, did you guys also realize that Jada and Will named their kids basically after themselves but swap genders? I think that's cool. Jaden and Willow. That did not occur to me right away, but a few years back somebody pointed that out, and I was like, oh, Jaden, Willow. Didn't think about it because they're just cool names that were not new. So, but yeah, going back to, how Jada gave support to Leah for like, yeah, I commend you and your work to help find Shelly, but like was not going to commend her on her work, discrediting the Church of Scientology. I mean, even if Jada is friendly with Leah Remini, that could render her a suppressive person. So it's just so messy. It's so messy, and it's really not that much of a stretch to consider that there is some connection between the Smiths and the church. Had a white guy slapped Chris, they would have been hauled away in cuffs. I don't think that's any more true than the next person. I really don't. um Oh, Jackie says, as someone who works on film sets, I don't feel safe around Scientology members anymore. Chris was reading from a pre-approved script and no one protected him on stage. Yeah, I kind of don't like that joke was approved, but yeah, that's scary to know. I mean, like, was it Daniel Tosh made a joke about like the fear of what could happen when you're on stage in front of so many people. Like, so many scary things could happen when the spotlight is on you and you got thousands of people around you. Who knows what the hell could happen? It's a very vulnerable state to be in. But also it's such an honor to be asked to host the Oscars. So I feel for him. It's sad. I feel for him. And he kept himself so composed, better than I can imagine a person would be able to do in that situation. Yeah. Anyway. No, do we know that the joke was written beforehand? It seemed off the cuff to me. I don't know 100% for sure how these things work, but again, speculation, but I would say with pretty strong confidence that these things would have to be approved beforehand. Like I said, a year ago, Anthony Jeselnik was talking about being at the Comedy Store when Chris Rock was rehearsing his Oscars routine. So this is something he's had to practice, write, and then you have to submit these things to the Academy or to somebody, because you can't just go out there and just be like, like, I'm not going to say the things because then the haters will clip them and then say, hello, Leash said all these things, but you can't just go up in front and be like, hail, that one guy who hates Jews and also F this group of people, and then like whatever ableist comment. You can't just do that. So like these things have to be approved. Yeah, they've publicly stated that it was ad-libbed. I'm gonna have to look. Excuse me, that's so rude. I'm gonna have to look into that because it sounded scripted to me. It sounded just like any other award show joke. Like the actual structure of the joke sounded very much like any other scripted joke. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That'd be an interesting thing to look into. Did he go off script? Anyway. Anyway, what a conversation. This was my favorite in a long time, I think. Mean Girls was fun, but this one might have been more interesting. Not fun. It's a sad situation, like I said. Um, yeah. Yeah, who's to know if she was going to be wearing a wig or even just like a turban or something like that, you know? Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. That would seem like he would have to undergo some consequences too then if that's the case. She could have worn a wig, she could have worn a turban, but at the same time, like, you can also just say with a certain amount of certainty just based on how she typically shows up at award shows and events like this. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Mm. She felt off the cuff because it was bad. It was bad. I agree. Um, I don't know that the people who vet the jokes are better comedians than Chris Rock. That would be very difficult to come across. But even a comedian like Chris Rock can write a bad joke. All right, guys. The Mean Girls one was fun. I'd like another lighthearted one like that. Well, feel free if you have ideas. So what I'm thinking, I'll just say this before I go. Um, if you've been hanging around, especially if you're a patron, you've probably heard me talk about how I'm going to be likely doing a lot more content centered around fashion and interior design. Ergo, I am going to continue to lose my audience. I'm basically going to be building a new one from scratch almost, as I'm completely shifting my content. And for people who don't understand the very basics of YouTube, when you leave YouTube, when you tell your audience that you're going to stop talking about the thing that brought you a lot of views, and then stop engaging in that what am I trying to say? Not that niche, but that category, that community. I don't what's the word I'm looking for? I hate when I lose my words. But yeah, but that category basically when you turn away from an entire category that you came into. I came into YouTube telling people, "Hey guys, I'm going to be making commentary and guess what? I'm going to be talking a lot about Gabby Hanna." And at first everybody was like, hell yeah, yeah, we're here for that." And then people were like, "Hey, we don't like that so much. Maybe it's like keep saying doing the commentary, but don't talk about Gabby Hanna." And I said, "Okay, I'm not going to talk about Gabby Hanna anymore." And so I stopped talking about her. But then I was like, "Hey, guess what, guys? I don't think I like commentary anymore. So I'm not going to do that anymore. This is commentary. I didn't say I'm not going to do it ever again, but for the most part, I don't really care to do that type of content anymore." And so I expect that actually expect to lose a lot more subscribers than I have so far. But I've got to lose, and especially me just presenting as a different, more authentic version of myself. Guess what? That's going to piss people off. I used to be the person who like tried to be ultra polite and offer trigger warnings and shit like that, which I understand plenty of people need, but that's not what I'm offering. And so I have to shed a good bit of my audience and then start collecting new audience. These are the basics of YouTube. And then especially when you're in limbo and not even making any sort of content, like as I'm just doing these live streams. I haven't started making the fashion content. I haven't started making the interiors content. I'm not doing any more of the commentary, especially not doing any more of the Gabby. Then like I'm in limbo right now. So thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for coming to the conversation because that means you just came here because you watch me, most likely. If you've come here because you heard about the conversation about Will Smith and you didn't know who I am, thank you. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, we'll look forward to different types of content. But I'd love your opinions. But I'm thinking that BAPs might be more conversations around pop culture related stuff. So because like I don't know that I care to do like an hour and a half live stream about interiors. So yeah, I think we can definitely like explore more pop culture related and media related. When I say media, I mean like films too, related content for BAPs. And then videos, when I do finally return to making them, can be a little bit more fashion and interiors related. Cuckoo. Hey, wait, August is here. Hey, Leash. Sorry you missed most of the stream. No worries. But I'm glad that you popped in. Cuckoo says that fashion and interior design isn't really my thing. Oh, but I totally understand your choice there. There's so much less potential for drama there. Yes, and that has a lot to do with it. I'm just in such a better place now that I'm not focusing on drama, because even if you try to bring a very fair, and there are people who do it, and God bless them, the people who come to look. I didn't realize it looks like we're holding hands back here. The people who come to that sort of content and bring that fair, nuanced balance, like conversations that I like to have, that's important. But also, I found that it was doing my mental health no good. When I took a break and I stopped I took a step back, and I didn't need to like keep up with Deaf Noodles and like all the problematic YouTubers and stuff like that. And I was like, I can feel like I can breathe. I feel like I'm not filling my head with such like toxic shit. And so like when I made the decision just to not cover that stuff anymore, pretty much at all, I felt so much happier, and I've been so much happier. And so I don't know that I can't expect the same views. By some miracle, maybe I'll be a YouTuber with a lot of views doing fashion interiors content, but I don't expect it. Commentary gets views, dude. Gabby Hanna gets views. Go look at any commentator, any YouTube channel that doesn't get a whole lot of views, and then look at their videos about Gabby. It gets views, and that's what I was raking in the views before, because the content has such a big market. And now if I move into fashion and interiors, that's more in the lifestyle space, and like that everybody wants to be a lifestyle YouTuber. So I don't know that there's going to be any real success there for me, but like in terms of numbers, but that's not what I'm looking for. This is not my job. I have a job. This is a little something that I do on the side that can make me some extra money. Potentially has the potential to give me a full-time income. Who knows? It's possible, it's in the cards. But for now, I just need it to be something that I enjoy more than I dislike. As long as I enjoy it, it is something that I'm going to do. And fashion and interiors bring me joy. So it doesn't matter how many views I get, as long as what I'm doing is something that brings me joy and it's not hurting other people. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Maybe I can talk about room setups to accommodate for cats. Okay. I mean, baby gates. That's really the answer. All right, guys. I got to pee so bad, and it's how this is connected, how the outfit. I'll give you one more view of the fit. How it is connected in the back is not. It's complicated. It is complicated, and it's going to be difficult to make my way in and out of this, just a little bit. Yeah, thank you to the mods. Thank you so much for taking care of the chat. It was a really good time, and I know that you guys are working to make sure that everything stays kosher. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to you guys for being here. I feel like I'm giving my speech now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for chatting. If you did chat, if you engaged in the conversation, thank you for that. And please, if you have any more ideas in terms of more pop culture and media related topics, hello@helloleash.com. Shoot me an email. I'm always open to ideas. So if there's something you want, let me know what you want me to talk about. All right. Love y'all. So happy to hear this too. All right, guys. I'll see you next week. Most likely expect some shifts here and there as I'm dealing with my move, but so far we're on track for next week. All right. Thank you guys. Love you. Love you, love you, love you. Bye.